Hey guys, this is Andrew Hara. I just wanted to say, since we recorded this episode, my film, The Empty Space, has been accepted and will premiere at the Sacramento Horror Film Festival. The great thing about it this year is that because of COVID, it's online, which means anyone in the US can watch it. So if you want to watch it, please give it a watch. It is about mental illness, it's about anxiety and aliens. It's scary, it's funny, it's weird. I think it's my best film, so please give it a watch if you're interested and help want to support us. Also, I did a short film called Wellness Check that we filmed during COVID, and that one is premiering at the Oregon Scream Week, which is next weekend. So I think it'll have already passed the weekend of the 11th. But it's also playing at the end of this month at the Nightmares Film Festival, which is also online. So yeah, give them a watch. I'll follow me on social media where I'll have more details once we get scheduling and how to buy tickets and everything. But yeah, please support us and that would be great. Thanks.
Hello, my name's Andrew Hara, and I'm the director of such films as The Last Ones, a zombie drama about two people trying to survive when a third person's thrown in the mix.
Like a
And also,
psychological horror.
it's a psychological horror drama. I don't want people to think that it's not a drama because there's so much drama. It's packed to the gills with drama. My second film is called Borderland. It's a mexploitation film about two people trying to take out a debt with the cartels, and they have one night to do it. It's a fun midnight movie type of film, and they're both on Amazon. You can buy them on Best Buy. They're on a bunch of streaming things. So if you have a Roku, if you have a Steam, I don't even know, if you have the movie channel in Thailand, you can watch my films for free or rent them on Amazon Prime. I feel like right now there is a lack of positivity in film critique and film viewing in general. Like, people want to watch films just to hate on them. I think that that's a dumb way to watch films. And especially if a movie has a good theme. That's what I want to focus on. Theme, intention, why Southland Tales is the best movie of all time.
If you don't let me suck your dick, I'm gonna kill myself.
These kind of things are why I decided to have a podcast. And so today's movie is probably our most critically acclaimed movie we're going to watch. It's also our longest movie we're probably going to watch because it is long as hell. It is Brotherhood of the Wolf, or Paca de Lupas in French. It's directed by Christopher Gans, who went on to direct Silent Hill. He just directed Beauty and the Beast with Vincent Cassel. So the basic story is that the Brotherhood of the Wolf it's a historical fiction movie. In France from 1764 to 1767, there was some kind of beast that prowled the French countryside and killed up to 100 people, although the numbers change. It could be as much as 200 and it could be as low as 20 people, depending on what report you read. So this is a historical fiction about what that really was, because nobody even knows what the beast was. Nobody knows. All they know is that something was killing people
during like the beginnings of like the revolution.
I want to say it's right before the French Revolution. It's definitely a good metaphor for why the French revolted. Gregor and Manny have come from France into the countryside because some kind of creature is hunting the commoners, and they don't know what it is, but it's been about 3 years, so they're coming to figure it out. Gregor plays like a taxidermist who's also an adventurer.
They call him a naturalist and a gardener at times, like a good kind of like background.
He's an adventurer. And then Mark Descanos, who plays Manny.
Well, that scene too is very, because so they chase him down, they're beating the old man, Manny gets off his horse, expertly dispatches them with martial arts.
Arts, keep in mind, he is a Native American, and for some reason he knows karate.
And you find out later, much later, he taught it to Gregoire.
Yeah. Well, they're blood brothers, which we don't find out right away. But first, let's start about how this movie starts. This movie starts at the end of the French Revolution. Like, there's a huge crowd waiting outside, and then like his butler comes in and is like, "Hey, well, you need to get out of here because this is the French Revolution." And he's like, "Nah, just give me some candles and some wine, dude. I have some work to do." And so he starts writing. He's like, "Oh, let me tell you this story about the Brotherhood of the Wolf." And so you kind of know going in that they're going to be critical of the monarchy and the hierarchy of France.
I don't think there's one scene of the nobles doing anything useful. Like I think it's they either get in the way or just like shown to be ignorant.
That my taxes are sent to the ministries in Paris? I'd much rather give it to my valets.
I will give this movie tons of credit, almost too much credit, for the fact that they managed to make revolutionary clothes, or French revolutionary clothes, look super cool, because they have like those big trench coats that'll go up to their eyes, and they're wearing like the French hats.
The tricorners.
Yeah, and that has never looked good ever, except in this movie. They look like badasses.
I was actually gonna say, to that point, this is a bit of a gamer's aside. I know you're not a gamer. You don't understand if you don't see Mario on the screen. But one of the best games of this console generation, Bloodborne, was clearly influenced by this movie because they dress the same way. They wear tricorner hats.
Oh, I have
They have
seen
long
people
cloaks.
play that game.
They hunt beasts. Like the whole thing is you're a hunter hunting like big monstrous beasts. I was like, oh, clearly there was some influence on the art direction. So if you like Bloodborne, you should watch this movie.
And then they go to a brothel. Like, it is a very French movie. Like, they go to the brothel, and at no point is Gregor ever like, "Oh, I shouldn't do this because I like a girl." He's just constantly boning at that brothel. You don't see him in his bed for the rest of the movie. If you ever see him asleep, he is always at that brothel.
And yeah, they did something too, and I actually kind of interesting because when he first walks into Monica Bellucci's room, she's playing cards, and I
She's
thought
not playing cards. Those are tarot cards.
No, those are regular non-tarot cards.
Really?
Yeah, because I was like, oh, she's a fortune teller. She's like a mystic, and she kind of is mystic later. But I was like, wait, no, that's just like the Queen of Hearts and such. So like. And it's kind of like a weird, because she keeps playing it while he's talking to her, and I was almost like, oh, is she kind of like giving him the cold shoulder, like, oh, I'm not even going to stop like playing this game to like talk to you, because she never reads his fortune or anything. And I honestly thought that was the scene they were setting up, but you know, she just plays cards, puts them away, and then has sex with him.
And this movie was made in 2001, which is after The Matrix, and I want to say that it might have been influenced by The Matrix, because it does this thing where
it might have been.
I mean, it was in France. Does The Matrix even make it all the way to France? That's my question. It'll be in normal motion and it'll slow down to slow, because like The Matrix doesn't do the slow motion, fast motion thing.
Yeah, it kind of does a little. Yeah, it doesn't really do that. It's almost something where it was pre 300.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, it does the 300 thing, and I feel like it's more that they were like, okay, well, The Matrix did that. What's something cool we can do with the camera?
No, but there's definitely a Matrix influence by the way they just fight, even though
the way everyone knows karate.
They have no reason to know kung fu. They fight just like Neo for most of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So they do this hunt. Both of them have come to the conclusion that whatever this thing is, it's not a normal wolf. So going on these lavish wolf hunts are just a waste of time.
The girl
who Gregor instantly becomes attracted to,
like Marianne asks him about Manny's beliefs.
Manny does start reading everyone's like, here's your spirit animal. And that's when they're like, that's when they find out that Manny is Gregor's blood brother, and they're like, how could you do this? And he's like, they have like a long conversation about whether Manny is a human being or a different type of species, to show like how racist they are.
How could you have mixed your blood with that of a savage?
Yeah, because he's even like, yeah, they've interbred, so I know that we're all humans. And then they're like, oh, whites can interbreed with blacks, and we know they're not human, so that doesn't prove anything. Just to show how like incredibly racist they were.
Yeah, and like I said, like the movie does never, like if it has a chance to portray the hierarchy in a negative light, it does it. Which, I mean, and don't get me wrong, it's not like they're lying or anything. This is how they were. But it is funny, like, if you watch like The Patriot with Mel Gibson. Like they always make a point of being like, yeah, he's in the Revolutionary War, but he didn't own any slaves. Like he was the good one, and it's like, let's be real, guys. So I do like that aspect where they're like, they don't ever like soften the blows on how bad the French royals were. Which is, again, very non-American. Like in 12 Years a Slave, where Brad Pitt, he's like, I'm the good slave owner. And it's like, that's not a real thing, guys.
The point that I'm trying to make is that I like that the movie doesn't shy away from our past. Movies, especially American movies, tend to want to erase the past, even as they confront it. That our past is racist, and a lot of other countries have racist histories, and I think being able to confront them, even in a horror movie about a monster, is important.
So yeah, back to the movie. The French Yosemite Sam is like, hey, we killed the wolf because the king wants this done.
Yeah, they say it's the king. Essentially, it's like the king just wants this to pretend this is finished.
Like Gregor's like, there's no way that's the wolf. His like jaw is tiny compared to the actual wolf, and he isn't like 6 feet tall, and so they're like, well, use your taxidermy skill. Like, oh yeah, you're a taxidermist. Luckily you're a French detective, swashbuckling, naturalist, taxidermist.
This was one misstep to me because they bring that guy in to fake kill the wolf, or he kills just a regular wolf. And he's super arrogant and dismissive towards like Gregoire and Manny. And I honestly thought, because I couldn't remember this, that like later when the real beast shows up again, he would have to try and fight it and die horribly. But instead, I think he just fucks off back to Paris and you never see him again.
Well, and no, but see that they like if he had gone back and died, it would have helped. Like, oh, he got what he deserved, but it also would have hurt the theme of the movie, which is the royals do not give a shit if people are dying. They just care that they look weak. Gregor says people are gonna keep dying, and then whoever's like in charge, like the French royal chief, is like, we're never gonna hear about another death again. Like the case is closed. Turn in your badge.
You're right.
So Manny and Gregor go to stop it, and they're off the leash, so to speak. They're off the leash.
That's not dumb.
They're barking up the wrong tree.
You don't. It's wolves aren't dogs.
They're packing it in. They're howling at the bit.
That's not the. It's chomping at the bit or champing at the bit, which means the same thing. Either way, you were wrong.
I don't know what a bit is.
It's the thing, the bridle in a horse's mouth to get it to.
Why would a wolf do that, Josh?
Anyway, they go because Manny gets all done up as like a tribal warrior, you know.
Yeah. In the middle, like even as a kid when I watched this, I was like, "Isn't Manny freezing?" Because it's France, and even if it's like at this point, I think it's like February or March, it's still very cold. I don't know why.
Well, then, like the traps that they set are like, oh, this is a giant like swinging thing, and this is like these like spikes. But they're traps that, like, Manny uses them very effectively. Like, he actually, I think early on, the Marquis gets injured, and then so Gregoire just is kind of like, oh, let me go help him. And then Manny's like, don't worry, I got this. But all the, like, it's like, oh, well, we made this spike trap, but the way you use it is you have to release it and then do a backflip in the air over the beast as it's lunging at you, and then it'll hit it. It's like, oh... So literally only a ninja.
Well, to be fair, Manny did, like, he's not making them for anyone else.
That's true, but it's like, man, I hope the Marquis wasn't in that room, because he would have been fucked. It's like, all right, now just jump 10 feet in the air.
Like, where's your crossbow now, buddy? You're about to die.
So all we see is that Manny is like a badass, and then he finds like the hidden kind of cultist layer, and it's just like getting everyone. Like he is just like running through them.
He's just part of the cult, and they're like the bodyguards, and so Manny has to fight them all.
Right, and the only reason he loses is because the woman that he's attracted to essentially distracts him for a minute.
And then the masked man shoots him in the back. And so Gregor, like, he cleans off Manny's dead body. He's all bloody and stuff. And then
Gregor goes sicko mode.
he like goes into their camp. He's painted his face black, and he just literally plows through everyone and murders the shit out of
It is one of those. It's almost like it almost reminds me of Unforgiven, where he doesn't want to fight the whole movie, and then when he finally has to, it's just like not even a little bit. Like I think the first thing he does is first starts a fire, and then the second they come out to investigate, just starts killing them like a dozen at a time, like with fire arrows.
And like this is the first time we've seen Gregor actually fight, and he's like, he like kills them, and he's like cutting off their heads and like slamming them into walls. He kills like almost the whole tribe.
And I think he has like dual axes. Like he is just like completely. He fights all the Wolverine blade guys. Kills them all, and then it even says, I think the narrator says,
Fronsac returned to Manny's body. His vengeance was far from being exacted. But according to Indian custom, it was at the first light of dawn that he could best help his friend join his ancestors.
And he had to like observe like the proper rites for Manny's body.
Yeah, he has
so
to burn
almost
Manny.
like, he would have just finished the movie if he didn't want to respect his friend's like wishes, you know.
Yeah,
he has to burn the body at dawn essentially to like guide him to the afterlife. Yeah.
And that's when they arrest him because they're like, "Hey, you literally killed half the town. You're under arrest."
Right.
And so Monica Bellucci goes to visit him, and she tells him that she's working for the Vatican. She's poisoned his food,
right?
So he like dies.
And it's such a weird fake out because you know.
Yeah, you know he's not gonna die. So then Monica Bellucci and she unburies him. But yeah, so then it cuts to the night, and there's the Brotherhood of the Wolf, and they're chomping at the bit. And they're all like praying, and they're saying like, "Hey, we're going to release wolves in every countryside." Because the motivation behind the cult is that they're trying to punish the crown because they think that the crown has become godless. And so they're all having like their little secret meeting. They're all in red robes, and that's when Gregor's like, "Hey, I'm alive." They have a cool scene where he like calls everyone out by name, and then he calls Jean-Luc Francois. He like takes off his mask, which isn't the monster mask. Like, make it the monster mask if he's gonna take off a mask anyway. But yeah, he takes off his mask and he goes, "Amen." And that's when you realize that Monica Bellucci has called her Pope cops because she works for the Vatican.
That's right.
And she's called the Pope Police, and they've
shown
up
to kill. And this is where the healer's daughter, who killed Manny or helped him get killed, is running away. And then Monica Bellucci pulls out a bladed fan and just slices her
She pulls
throat.
out a katana, like from Mortal Kombat, a katana blade, just cuts her throat. Which, like, these two characters have never interacted before.
Right, the idea, like...
But yeah, so he comes out and he has, like, two swords that he just spins on his hands, like Skeletor. And that's when Jean-Francois pulls out his bone sword.
Not just a bone sword.
Not just a bone sword.
A bone sword trick whip.
It's held together with chains.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even make a lot of sense what it is. Like, it's a sword that looks like it's made of bones. It has like a kind of a hook at the end. But at one point when they're fighting, he lets it go, and it turns into a chain whip that has like pieces of the sword in between the whips.
Yeah, like the bone segments.
Yeah, and it cuts them, and like that's just what he can use it as. And then he pulls it back, and it like comes like Captain America's shield, where it just falls straight into place.
Well, frankly, I love the bone sword.
I mean, the bone sword is amazing. Eventually, he gets stabbed with his own bone sword, and he like tries to shoot it.
Because he grabs Gregor's swords with his bone sword chain and tries to pull them back, but Gregor angles it so the swords stab him. So he was hoisted by his own like bone sword petard, essentially.
He was hoisted by his own bone tard.
Yeah, that's the better way of saying it.
Yeah, that's the more intellectual way. And then it cuts back to old man Thomas, because Thomas is the narrator, and everyone's like, "Hey, you're a good boss," and he's like, "Thanks," and then Thomas is like, "Yeah, lies are bad. Anyway, I'm about to go get my head chopped off," and then he goes. Like they walk him down, and he goes and he sees the guillotine, and then he's like, "I think about Gregor and Marianne, and I hope they're happy." And it cuts to them on a boat, which is either his memory or what he thinks he wants to happen, and that's how it ends.
You're not
But
sure. Well,
I just
they also show they kill the beast. Yeah, well, because he goes and it's finally you just see the beast on the ground, and you realize it is a wolf, but that they've basically trapped in this like horrific like armor with like.
right, but it's not a wolf.
Isn't it a wolf?
It's a lion.
Oh,
'Cause
I just saw an animal eye.
Well, they imply that that it's a lion, and it's clearly a
right.
lion. So yeah, but then they find out that they've added like a bunch of mechanical.
Yeah, they've armored
chains.
it. They've like do it, and it clearly is not. It's suffering, and then so Gregor Mercy kills it by shooting it in the head, like bypassing the armor.
Then he puts his hand on it, and he's like,
"It's heavy." Yeah, it's a heavy scene.
Yeah, it's a good scene.
Yeah.
It's also like the movie has dealt with the wolf so much, and I do like that the wolf is constantly treated, especially by Gregor, as just an animal. He's never treated as like a monster.
Right.
And so this is a fitting end to him. And speaking of fitting ends, Thomas
Yeah, gets his
head chopped off. One of the main themes is perception. And it's about how people's perception can end up hurting a lot of people. In the whole movie, you're seeing this as the royals, especially once you realize they run the cult, using the commoners as bait to send a message to the king, And so the commoners, regardless of whether they're good or bad, they're punished for something that doesn't even really involve them. And you see that come around at the end because, for all intents and purposes, and all we know about the character and from his reaction, Thomas is a good royal, and he treats his people fairly, even as an old man. They even make a mention of being like, "Oh, they wanted me to go with them to Africa, but I had to stay to help my people." And he still gets his head chopped off. Because again, it's perceptions of, even though he was a good person, the perception is that all royals are bad, and so he's going to be murdered for the same
pushed
thing.
It so far that
Exactly.
everyone's getting punished, yeah.
And I think that that's an interesting idea to just play with. And again, like, you see the royals because they're racist, they're sexist, they treat people like pawns, and they're just terrible the whole time.
Enough said about this evil beast. After all, it only devours vermin.
Even if it was unintentional, he's part of the reason so
Right.
many French commoners are tortured and killed. Yeah.
But this was always a problem, and I'm part of the problem,
Right. And
It's
like,
interesting.
again, like the idea of everyone being as pawns, where Gregor's a pawn in that they eventually just need him so that he can make a taxidermy wolf. And then the wolf even is a pawn in this movie. So it kind of comes back around where at the end of it, Thomas becomes the pawn for the French Revolution. And he kind of understands now that lies, like all these lies upon lies, have sealed his own fate.
So,
yeah,
it's interesting.
It's an interesting movie. It's an interesting movie that has a lot to say, and also has multiple karate scenes, which is always cool. It has a big monster. Yeah. So Brotherhood of the Wolf, watch it, and if you like it, then what I want you to do is like and subscribe, but more importantly, go to Amazon Prime and watch my movies. The last one's Borderland. Put them on, enjoy the shit out of them, find the goodness in them.
You're like, hey, come on, I tried. I say cut it there. This is good.
Perfect.